So we've got quite a luxury here in Tennessee because we can talk about the new NFL kickoff with the guy who was in the most famous NFL kickoff of all time. It's Ramon, Caleb, Will, RKW right here, 104.5 The Zone, joined by Titans legend. He is Dr. Kevin Dyson with us on the phone lines this morning. Dr. Dyson, what's up? How are you?
Hey, good morning. I say this, though. I think the Music Miracle as a Tennessee fan is safe. I don't think they'll ever see that again based on how they're doing the kickoff nowadays.
That's a great point. That's a great point. What was your opening impression of the new kickoff and Kyrus Jackson, who had a 63-yard return on the first iteration of the new kickoff for the Titans?
Well, I'll start with him. I think that shows value. I think if you're on that bottom half of that receiving core, you got to have value somewhere else, and special teams is a way for a receiver to make a roster. And I think his explosiveness and ability to make a play, break tackles, is adding value that you have a hard look at him to see what you're going to do. I think the interesting thing about that kickoff, though, is, it's preseason. I think people still kind of fill it out, but strategy is going to come into play. And I spoke about it after the game. What do you do if you're up 3 or up 2 at the end of the ball game? You just took the lead up 2. Do you kick it into that kicking where you have the return zone? Do you kick it back at the end zone and you get the ball in the 30? If it goes out of bounds, you get on the 40. So there's some strategy that's going to be coming into play. I'll be curious how these special teams coordinators map that out.
Dr. Dyson, what did you see from the ones on offense? Calvin Ridley, of course, had a nice catch and run. You saw a little bit of Treylon Burks making a play early in the game. But what stuck out to you the most about those starters on the offensive side?
Just how comfortable they seem with the scheme already. I like what they're doing with the two-headed monster in the backfield, of course. I think we saw some of the guys who we expected them, like Ridley and Levis, we expected them to, kind of be playmakers and do those things, but they all seem to be in tune and comfortable with the offense. Callahan seems to be kind of in comfort with everybody has, all his tools at his disposal. That was really good to see. And, of course, it's just a small sample size, and I still think he's trying to figure out everything he has. He doesn't know what everybody can and cannot do just yet because he hasn't been in game mode that long. And then we forget a lot of times that this is really his first time calling offense. And so he's got to get a feel for everybody and what their capabilities are. But you did get a glimpse of him trying to put the ball in everybody's hand that first preseason game, get everybody a feel, get their feet wet a little bit. So I want to see what that jump is from week 1 to week 2. Obviously, they're practicing against the Seahawks a couple of days, but that preseason game, how does he utilize the weapons of whoever plays?
Dr. Kevin Dyson with us this morning talking Titans. Dice, when you look at the flow of this offense this morning, that's when Will asked us, what would our headline be? And mine was the offense had flow. Is that how you saw it? A little bit more pitch and catch, having guys at different layers as it pertains to routes and what Will Levis had to work with this weekend. How did you evaluate that?
Yeah, that's what I mean by comfort level. It just seemed like it had a good flow. It wasn't no second guessing. It seemed like they had a good rotation. Guys knew what their roles were, the expectations. You kind of worry about that when you talk about utilizing multiple guys to tote the rock and how you going to do that. And not to tilt the hat of Kansas City Chiefs, but they have found that niche, right? They have found how to use multiple guys specifically in the backfield to get the best out of everybody, right? Just who gets hot, gets the ball. And that's what it seemed like Callahan did. He seemed like he was in a good little rhythm of the offense and the expectation what everybody had, and they just had a good, nice little flow. Now, again, it's preseason game. Probably there's a little blitzing going on from both sides of the defenses, but you still got a long, long ways to go to see if this is going to be a stout, stellar offense. But so far, man, the sample size looks good. I think it's exciting. If you're a Titans fan, it's exciting to see the possibilities of what this offense could potentially do. I think it's interesting because we've been clamoring about, do we move to more of a high-flying, ball in the air, this era of football offense where we have been more of that old, quote-unquote, old-school offense of run the football downhill and use play action and make some plays downfield from time to time. So this is going to be interesting to see how he does. I think what it was interesting was he wasn't just throwing the ball up in the air all day long. He was very strategic, getting the ball in people's hands, letting them run out the catch, putting the ball in screen game, which I love the screen game. That looked like it was very effective the other night. So there's some tools that he's trying to embed into this offense that look really good.
No doubt. Dr. Kevin Dyson with us this morning. Dice, when it comes down to preseason also, there's always a coach to say, all right, don't make me show my true character and colors, okay? And I say that to say the 49ers converted a few third downs or some second and longs over the course of this game, and I think we got an opportunity to see Denard Wilson dial it up a little bit, watching Chance Campbell and Otis Reese and Caleb Murray somewhat dice up their quarterback. Like, I don't think I've seen a quarterback get hit as hard as theirs did on that Chance Campbell sack, man. What did you think of the reaction of Denard Wilson in those moments right there as far as calling those blitzes?
You know, that was another thing. He was a little more aggressive for a first preseason game than you probably expect, but that was good to see. He wanted to give you I guess, and I can't speak for him, I'm assuming he wanted to see what his guys could do. He wanted to put them in situations, see if they're going to, react, make plays. How do they come in at different angles? Are they going to be attacking? He wanted to see, he's got the keys to the car too. Now, it's a brand new car for him too. He's got to see all the bells and whistles. He's got to push all the buttons and see what he can do. And so that was fun to watch. I think that aggression in that first preseason game was a little surprising considering it was a preseason game. But it gives you, in my opinion, a nice little glimpse of both sides of the ball, of that they want to be attacking. They want to go downhill. They want to dictate the outcome, which has been a little bit different than what we have. Not necessarily that we were playing that catch defense where it was bend, don't break, but sometimes we just sat back and weren't aggressive enough. And I think they both, on both sides of the ball, are really trying to be aggressive, at least from the first preseason game.
Dr. Kevin Dyson, kind enough to join us this morning on RK Dub. Let's chat a little bit about a couple of this year's draft picks. It's been good camp for many of these guys. Let's start on the offensive end with Jaquan Jackson. You mentioned that battle towards the end of the roster, and some of those guys being wide receivers. What did you like out of his game? Specifically, we saw him more in the return game making some explosive plays.
Yeah, I think, man, when you start talking about the guys where you're 5, 6, maybe even 7 receivers, you have to add value to your repertoire. Whether you're a gunner that's making plays downfield on kickoff, and in this case, returning the football, I think you definitely got to add value. Whether you're a change guy on third down or what is it, I think you always got to look to what can I add to this team if I'm not going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4? And that's what these guys are doing. Both Jacksons are both out there just adding value to their resume, and all 32 teams look at these film. These GMs, they're constantly working and talking. Coaches are constantly working and talking amongst each other. And so this is a guy. He's put on the show. So again, I just truly believe, not just receivers, but since we're talking receivers, you definitely have to find ways to add value to your resume, and being able to be a consistent big playmaker in the return game. That's hard to get rid of a guy like that. You've seen guys that's all they did for 10 years in their career because they were so explosive. And so if you can continue to be explosive in the return game, you can make a roster. And since we're talking about Titans roster, they can make it hard to let them go when it gets down to it.
When it comes to that other side of the ball, we all agree on this show, too. The 5th-round pick out of Louisville, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. has taken advantage of every opportunity in camp, specifically with Chidobe Awuzie out, right, with that calf injury. But then he goes and continues to do it in the first preseason game. Dr. Kevin Dyson, what do you feel about just this no moment seems too big for him, and he seems to be the perfect fit for this Denard Wilson defense?
But, and I'll go to Rand's, hat a little bit, man, his horn a little bit, man. You got to have a vision for kind of guys you want to be a part of your program. You want to make sure you got guys that are going to fit the personality of your coordinators, your play callers. And they got a guy who seemingly is fit right in. And then on top of that, from a player's perspective, that old Tiki Bar, I don't know if y'all remember that saying he said a few years, a long time ago. Gosh, I'm old now, but he said, man, opportunity came. He seized the moment. He never gave it back. And I think that's key, especially for guys, young guys, is when you get your moment, you get your opportunities, you got to take advantage of them and don't give them back, because you don't know when that opportunity is going to come again. How many times have you been in a training camp or a preseason where a guy made multiple mistakes, didn't fill the gap, dropped football, dropped the interception? It's those things where, like, well, he's not a playmaker. We can go in a different direction. So he's out here just like, man, I'm going to make this real difficult. I'm going to be in this rotation, something. He's making it real difficult for them on this decision-making process. And while we're here, I just got to give Rand his flowers, because they have built the roster seemingly with a lot of competition, with a lot of depth. And that's a good problem to have when you feel like you're good either way you go. When you got a lot of depth and you got a lot of guys that can fill a lot of voids. And it's going to be fun to watch this year. I think it's going to come down to, obviously, quarterback play when you get there, getting said and done, and some of the little statistical things that we talk about, red zone efficiency, third down efficiency, things like that. But right now, where they look, it's promising and it's exciting.
Dr. Kevin Dyson, our guest here this morning on Ramon, Kale, and Will. You catch him on your drive home from Titans games all season on Titans Talk Back. Dr. Dyson, Traylon Burks gets a big opportunity right now with DeAndre Hopkins out, banged up with an injury. What did you see from him in limited action on Saturday, and what is the best role for him moving forward in this offense, in your opinion?
He looked good. I mean, he's kind of this forgotten guy in a lot of respects, and not that we forgot about him, because I think he's been part of this conversation of where does he fit in on the plans, right? And because he's a first-round draft pick, you brought in 2 free agents over the past 2 years, 3 over the past 2 years that seemingly going to get the bulk of the reps. Where does he fit in? Interestingly enough, I think this is a prime opportunity, whether the Titans have plans for him for this year going forward, or using him as for value for something else to come in with D-Hop out. I think right now he just continues to be explosive. He looks comfortable. He looks like he's got rid of whatever pressure he was feeling the last year or two. He's just out there playing. He looked really good, man, very settled and comfortable. It'd be interesting to see his role, because he's never really been a vertical guy to me. He's more of a mid-range, short-range guy who can break tackles and make plays. And I think they kind of misused him in recent, trying to make him a vertical guy. He can run, but he seems to be a guy, put the ball in his hand, let him break tackles and make plays and move the chains. So it's going to be a different dynamic. Now, Ridley is a runner, and he's a sprinter, so you got a vertical guy. So, you can kind of use Traylon in other aspects. But, again, like I said just a minute ago, for a lot of guys, man, sometimes it's not about the team you're on. There's 31 other teams watching this film, and Traylon's one of those guys people may have their eyes on, like, okay, what they going to do? They got Tajay, they got Boyd, they got Ridley, they got D-Hop when he comes back, you know what I mean? Then we talk about the Jackson boys who can return kicks. Like, it's like, what are they going to do with this guy? And he may be able to add value to our roster. So, we just never know. It's still early on, and the new way they're doing the training camp and cuts and all the different things, and, how that going to affect it, like, because you wait until August 27th, I believe, is cuts, and will he be on that block trades? Will there be a receiver that gets cut that the Titans might like? It's a game, man. It's a business game, and I'm excited to see what they do with him, because I feel like he still has something left in his tank. But it's business, man. They brought a few guys that already have the pedigree, if you will, that I think they got full expectations are going to be the first 3. Then after that, we'll see.
I wanted to ask you about a wide receiver, but you mentioned competition and how they facilitated it, man. Coming out of that game, Dice, I don't know what they're going to do but with the number 3 running back. I mean, you got Hassan Haskins, Julius Chestnut, Jabari Small, all had solid showings this weekend as far as the running backs go, man. How do you view that position right now, that competition?
Man, that was great to see, because you start with the first 2 and just how you see them. Okay, that's going to be nice, right? You're like, okay, I can see where this is going. But then you're looking at the next couple of guys. You're like, you know what? Don't forget about us. And it kind of goes with what we were just talking about with receivers. I got to make sure I'm putting this on the film because you don't know what's coming. You don't know if I'm going to be the guy let go. You don't know if I'm going to be the guy traded. What have you. And so you got to be able to show that value of where you're at. I keep going back to that because when you're in positions like that, your value becomes not just necessarily being that third running back. It becomes how are you on kickoff? How are you on punt return or punt coverage and all the different things. That becomes how can I add value. So if you're looking at a guy, if you're trying to evaluate on who maybe has a tick ahead one or the other, look at what they're doing when they're not on offensive football. Are they making plays? Are they in the rotation on special teams? Are they on how many special teams are they on? That's when you start looking at, okay, they might have a plan for him. But you know, Ron, how they do it too. They'll put a guy to give him every opportunity to get a job somewhere else just because they see value in him, but they got plans for somebody else that might not be on kickoff team just yet or kickoff return just yet, but they plan on putting him in there, but they got the guy that they're not going to keep out there to give him some reps so people can see his value. So it's going to be interesting to see, man. I think with the two main guys, I think your third guy maybe need a little bit different skill set, maybe a little more of a bruiser, a little more physical, but we'll see how they map this out.
Dr. Kevin Dyson has been our guest. You get him every week. The Titans play post-game on Titans Talkback. Great to hear him again over the weekend. Dr. Dyson, we made it. Good to talk football with you, sir. Thank you.
Hey, man. Anytime. Y'all know you got me.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Absolutely.
Nice.
There's Kevin Dyson with us this morning. I think lots of good insight there on wide receivers. And I think that's really interesting on Treylon Burks. Saying he was maybe miscast as the deep threat guy. And he needs to be more of that Swiss Army knife. Catch and run.
You know, I'm going to always charge it to the coaches a good amount of time. You got to somewhat set players up to.
Super interesting. Coming up, Olympics are over, and we have a new commander-in-chief. His name is Stephen Curry. We'll talk about